17 police visits in 6 months, all because I dared to come back to my own ranch. Yeah, you heard that right. The very day I returned to my grandfather's land, the HOA president lost her mind, declared all-out war on me, and things got so over the top that even the cops started looking embarrassed to show up at my place again. You want to know what really shook me, though? It wasn't the fines or the lectures about curb appeal. It was realizing that her obsession with getting rid of me had nothing to do with rules anymore. That's when I knew something darker was going on, something nobody was talking about. And what I uncovered, well, it changed everything. The morning I pulled my old Ford up the dusty driveway, the Wyoming air tasted like freedom, maybe for the first time in 40 years. After a lifetime in the courtroom, 4 decades judging everything from stolen candy bars to million-dollar fraud, all I wanted was peace, a place to let my tomato plants grow wild and some honest quiet. The ranch had been in my family for 3 generations, a good 50 acres carved out of the wilderness by my grandfather's calloused hands. The nearest neighbor used to be 5 miles away, but the suburbs crept in, and with them came the special madness called a homeowners association. First warning sign literally showed up in my mailbox that afternoon. A fat envelope stamped with the Crimson Point Estates logo right on top of the bills, inside a welcome packet that read more like a legal threat. Thick handbook, full-color diagrams, rules about everything from the angle of your garbage cans to the year of your truck. I flipped through it like I used to flip through bad lawsuits, half amused, half insulted. Rule 17.3, trash cans 18 inches from the curb at exactly 90 degrees to the street. Rule 22.7, no vehicles older than the year 2000 in driveways between 7 and 7. I actually laughed, glanced at my old 1972 Ford, my prize, and thought, good luck, lady. A couple days later, wandering the property, I saw something odd. A battered old oak post at the far edge carved with some weird symbol I'd never really noticed before, a triangle inside a circle with wheat stalks beneath it. Thought it was just another relic, maybe a survey marker from my grandfather's day, figured I'd look into it later. 3 days after that, the first violation notice arrived. $50 for improper garbage receptacle placement. Apparently my trash can was at an 87-degree angle, not 90. The notice came with a diagram fit for NASA trajectory lines and all. I laughed and tossed it in the can, still improperly angled. If they wanted to waste paper on this, fine by me. I had a fence to fix and tomatoes to plant. That week, while patching up the fence, the real fun began. I heard the whine of an electric motor. Here comes a golf cart, beige as day, rolling up my driveway. Driving it was Beverly Thorne, queen of Crimson Point. She was mid-50s with blonde hair that somehow defied the Wyoming wind, a smile that never touched her eyes, and a Crimson Point blazer that made her look like a general at war with common sense. Mr. Reed, she said, climbing out with all the charm of a tax audit, I'm Beverly Thorne, president of the Crimson Point Estates HOA. Just wanted to welcome you and discuss some community concerns. Her voice was sticky sweet, the kind that says, I'd love to stab you with a regulation. She waved vaguely at my land. Your property could use a little updating to match community standards. That old fence, that storage shed, they're not quite in line with our guidelines. Then, eyes narrowing, she added, you know this land has potential. A lot of people would love to unlock it. That night I got suspicious. Sure, my property wasn't part of any HOA, but after 40 years as a judge, you learn to trust, then verify. I pulled records from the county deed surveys, everything. Turns out, just like I thought, my land was outside Crimson Point's legal reach. Their border ended at that old oak post. The $50 fine for my trash can, just the opening shot. But the violation notices kept coming. Every day a new one mailbox was the wrong shade of black. Mine was numbered at 18, not one of the 17 approved shades. Gravel in my driveway had stones too big. The Ford was an aesthetic disruption. They even fined me $200 for a tree branch growing in a pattern inconsistent with landscaping standards. It was like Beverly spent her nights inventing new ways to make my life miserable. At first I laughed, threw each notice in a folder I labeled comedy, but it wore on me. Not the money, just the constant needling. I'd come here for peace, and every walk to the mailbox felt like Russian roulette with paperwork. After 7 violations in 5 days, I called my old friend Marcus Chen, a property lawyer who'd argued cases in my court. He laughed, buddy, you've wandered into HOA hell. These people live for this. Then his voice went serious. Don't underestimate them. They'll wear you down. He offered to take my case, but I said no, this was personal. It got real on a Thursday. I was in my workshop fixing an old saddle when two sheriff's cruisers pulled up. Deputy Frank Russo, who I knew from court, got out looking tired. Judge Reed, he said Mrs. Thorne insists we investigate. Suspicious activity. I couldn't help myself. What am I running a meth lab in my tomatoes? He almost smiled. Power tools outside, approved hours. Potentially dangerous structures. He shook his head, made it clear this was a waste of everyone's time. Afterward, I invited them for coffee. Officer Martinez, the rookie, told me his great-uncle used to work my ranch. When they left, Russo said quietly, "You're not alone. She's got half the department on speed dial." That evening, sitting on my porch with a whiskey, listening to the wind in the cottonwoods, I realized I was under siege, not from criminals, but from a woman with a rule book and an ego. The next day, Beverly sent a community-wide email warning neighbors about suspicious activity near the border. She never named me, but she didn't have to. People who used to wave started crossing the street. Kids were hurried past my gate. Then the cameras showed up, 50 grand worth of surveillance pointed right at my property. That's when I decided enough's enough. Under cover of night, I put a little electrical tape over one camera lens, not vandalism, just a privacy reminder. Next morning, their crew had it fixed, but I'd made my point. I started planting fast-growing bamboo along the fence. The isolation Beverly tried to inflict was the hardest part, but even a grumpy old judge needs community. My unexpected ally turned out to be Ethan Hayes, a young dad in Crimson Point. He was being fined for his kids' toys, his work truck, the color of his daughter's playhouse. "We're thinking of moving," he said, "but who'll buy with all these fines?" We compared notes. Turns out I wasn't the only target. That night I drafted a legal template for Ethan to challenge his fines at the next HOA meeting, forced the board to justify each one, drowning them in their own paperwork. The night of the meeting, Ethan texted me. Beverly started stammering. Residents were murmuring, and for the first time someone had pushed back. Then the real twist landed. In the mail, a certified letter from Apex Mineral Group in Denver, claiming mineral rights on my land through a lease with the Thorne Family Trust, Beverly's own name. They offered to buy me out before extraction would disrupt my use of the property. All the fines, all the harassment, it had just been cover for a bigger plan. My hands shook as I read about significant mineral deposits under my land, copper rare earths. They'd been planning this for months, maybe years. I spent a sleepless night in the barn digging through old records, desperate for a loophole. Then I found an old photograph of my grandfather standing by that oak marker with 3 other men in an official-looking document. On the back, his neat script, "The Covenant Makers." August 15th, 1947. Let this stand as proof against all claims. I barely slept, racing at dawn to the county records office where I dug for days. At last, buried under agricultural agreements, I found a master covenant signed by 4 families, creating an agricultural easement that banned any mineral or industrial extraction, not just on my land, but on all 4 ranches. Violation meant instant loss of rights, full stop. The best part, they'd even set up a trust fund enough to pay for legal fights in perpetuity. I ran my fingers over the triangle and circle on the seal, the same as on the old oak. It wasn't just a marker, it was a shield. That afternoon, I met with a local historian, Dr. Hawkins. She was floored. "Your grandfather wasn't just a rancher. He saw this coming." She pulled up news archives, found records of the mining company getting shut down in 1948 by that very covenant. We traced the signatures. One was Antonio Russo, Deputy Russo's grandfather. The legal web they'd built was airtight. That week, I called Ethan. At the next HOA meeting, asked Beverly if she knows about the Master Covenant of 1947. He got quiet, then said, "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" I smiled. "The Queen's been playing checkers. My grandfather built a chessboard." Beverly got served at her big summer gala in front of the whole neighborhood, sued for conspiracy, fraud, and violation of the covenant. Her face, when the process server read out the charges, absolutely priceless. The trial was standing room only. I represented myself. This was personal. Deputy Russo testified. 17 calls in 6 months, 0 actual crimes. He confirmed his grandfather's signature on the covenant. The whole gallery was buzzing. Beverly's lawyers tried to fight, but every exhibit, every document, every fine just made the conspiracy clearer. When I showed the founding documents with her signature right above the line that said, "I acknowledge all existing covenants," she snapped. "That old paper doesn't matter. There's $50 million under that ranch. It should be mine." She went off in court screaming about all her plans, her surveys, her investments, confessing to everything. The judge, one of my old students, no less, dropped the gavel. The HOA dissolved, all fines voided. Permanent injunction against Apex. Beverly liable for $200,000 in damages. She stood there stunned as neighbors wept with relief. One by one, people came forward, stories of fines for American flags, bird feeders, kids' bicycles. The cruelty had run deep. Beverly vanished within a week, moving trucks, empty stairs, no goodbyes. Crimson Point reformed this time as a true community. No more presidents, just volunteers. The punitive damages, I donated every dime to a community fund for gardens, for kids, for anyone who needed help. A month later, I'm back on my porch, watching tomatoes climb the trellis, listening to laughter and neighborly chat drift over the fences. No more cameras, no more fear. Even Deputy Russo drops by for coffee, swapping stories about our grandfathers. The new families come to me for gardening advice, not to issue complaints. Beverly got the quiet community she wanted. She's just not here to enjoy it. So here's the thing. Sometimes the law really can save a way of life if you know where to look. Sometimes the good guys win, but only if they stand their ground. Tell me, what would you have done? Taken the money and run, or dug your heels in for a fight? I want to hear what justice means to you. Drop a comment below. Was I right, or just another old fool fighting the tide? Let's hear it.